Okay, so hello class again. At this point, I will be discussing about chapter 8 of our module. This will be our last topic. So we will be discussing about the chemical, biological, radiation, and nuclear and incidence response. Okay. So these are the so-called CBRN, which are considered as weapons of mass destruction. So, for CBRN, the continuing use of chemicals, the high energy sources, and the daily exposure to toxic agents has already become a way of our lives. It is already included in our lives. So, we also experience exposure to background and cosmic radiation. The increased use of radioactive materials are great potential for biological harm, especially in hospitals. So, as we can observe in a hospital for X-ray radiation, there is an indication that we should be aware. If the red light is on, we should not enter the facility or the room because radiation is being passed. So, next we have all forms of radiation which can be damaging to all living organisms. We have the nuclear power plant, the medical use of diagnostic x-rays, and other radioactive sources to identify and treat malignancies. Like for cancer, um, one of the um, one of the one of the treatments for cancer was cobalt-60 radiation. So, it is harmful for the cancer cells. It kills the cancer cells, but it also kills some healthy cells in our body. So, it is also damaging to us also. So, in the 20th century, the renewed interest in the development, manufacture, and stockpiling of chemical and biological warfare agents have already begun. And then also, there has been the new awareness on blood-borne pathogens such as AIDS, the hepatitis, syphilis, which are closely associated with the concerns for the safe handling and disposal of these materials, like the disposable gloves, gowns, syringes, and sharps, and the decrease in the use of incineration for the disposal. So, ngayon kasi, hindi na nag-a-allow masyado ng incineration or yung pagsusunog ng mga used na substances or used medical supplies na ginamit sa biological, for example, sa pagkuha ng dugo, katulad ng mga syringes, kasi kapag ka natusok, for example, accidentally, yung isang nurse or isang medical technologist natusok nung same needle ng syringe na ginamit sa isang person affected with AIDS, since it is transferable through the blood, pwede silang ma-infect also ng AIDS. So, very, very mahirap din gumalaw sa isang medical facility because they have to really be very careful dun sa mga ginagamit nilang materials also with themselves also. Yung mga gloves, meron silang pagsasegregate na ginagawa. But then, nagkakaroon na rin ng issue sa pag-dispose ng mga safety disposal of this medical or medicinal gowns or gloves and syringes. So, what are the weapons of mass destruction? These are any weapon or device intended or has the capability to cause death or serious bodily injury to a significant number of people. Significant. So, mataas siya. Or pwedeng sobrang dami ng bilang ng tao na affected. Or pwede naman na hindi ganun kadami, but then, piling mga tao yung naging victim. So, pwedeng sa isang, for example, sabihin na natin sa Senate. Nandun lahat ng mga senators, mga cabinet members, yun yung piniling i-attack. So, kahit hindi man sila ganun kadami, for example, 20 individuals, 20 to 50 individuals lang yun nandun. But then, very significant yung mga persons na nandun sa area na naging victims ng attack. And then, pwede rin naman na sa masses, masyado madami, abot ng mga 500 to millions of people ang pwedeng madamay. So, itong mga weapons of mass destruction, if you are watching films which are including terrorism, pwede nyong makam across yung mga weapons of mass destruction na to. Katulad ng movie na Sum of All Fears, meron dyang chemical weapons na ginagamit, may biological weapons, yung mga series sa mga TV series din, and then even yung Wonder Woman na movie, merong movie na Wonder Woman which is meron na feature na mga chemical weapons doon. So, yung nire-release doon sa weapons of mass destruction, pwedeng radiation or radioactive materials. The onset of the symptoms is chronic. Pwedeng ma-require ng days to weeks. And then we have toxic or poisonous chemicals or their precursors, which are also considered as chemical warfares. Natural or man-made substances that may cause death or injury to exposed persons. Disease organism, which are considered biological warfares. These are any living microorganisms and toxins produced by plants and animals or organism. The onset of the symptoms is fast to delay or even after weeks. So, meron din, pwede rin namang explosive. So, these are the indicators of a CBRN incident. So, we have dead animals, birds, fish, and or insects. Na usually, hindi naman usual na nangyayari sa area na yon. And then, we have mass casualties, unusual liquid droplets and unexplained odors, dead vegetation and unusual low clouds of fog, unusual debris. So, these are all, kung mapapansin nyo, puro unusual siya. Unusual din yung dead animals na present doon sa area. Okay, so those are the indicators of a CBRN incident. So, we have two types of CBRN incident. We have the overt and covert attacks. Yung overt, yun yung mga obvious attacks. Like explosion or chemical attacks where there are many casualties. They tend to be the first recognized by members of the public or the first responders. And immediate response by many emergency services will be required. Many emergency services, usually kasi because of the mass casualties. Yung covert attacks naman, they are less obvious. So, minsan hindi alam na nangyayari na meron na palang attack na nangyayari unless dumadami na yung patay. So, these are like the biological attacks which are not easily recognized until several days after a release when many people start to show the symptoms. So, hindi nila nalalaman. For example, sa tubig, may nilagay na chemical or may nirelease na biological microorganism like the anthrax na nakikita lang nila if nagkaroon ng same symptoms or nagkaroon ng pattern dun sa isang area. They tend to be first recognized by healthcare workers and response will be led by public health. So, dito, first responders ang magre-respond or makaka-recognize and ang response will be from the emergency services. Ito naman, healthcare workers, syempre ang makaka-recognize kasi mga symptoms yon for certain illnesses, and then public health will be the one to respond. So we have 4 stages of an overt attack or the obvious one. So, we have the recognition, discovery of the incident, the response stage. So, this begins with the dispatch of the receiving call. So, minsan kapag nag-arrive na yung first responder at the crime scene. Then, we have the intervention. Dito na pumapasok yung intervention. Yung mga specialists, technicians, nagkakandak na ng detection, identification, investigation, decontamination, and casualty management. So, minsan, sa ganitong instance, dito na papasok yung expertise ng mga forensic unit. Like, iba na kasi yung pangalan ng PNP Crime Lab ngayon. Ang pangalan na ng PNP Crime Lab is the PNP Forensic Group. So, we are a forensic unit. So, pwedeng dyan na pumasok yan. Dyan na papasok din mga chemist na mag-detect, mag-identify kung ano yung ginamit na weapon. So, meron din nangyayari na decontamination. Okay. So, and then we have the recovery stage. This deals with the ongoing retrieval, monitoring, site remediation, and criminal investigations. So, we have now the radiation, radioactive materials, and mixed wastes. So, natural radiation sources are the cosmic rays. Radioactive elements present in the earth are radium, thorium, and uranium. These exist in the earth's crust. And then we have the radioactive isotopes. Isotopes of potassium and carbon-14 lies within the cells of the human body. So, nasa katawan mismo natin tong mga radioactive isotopes na to. And then, we have the artificial source, the x-rays, yung mga equipment na ginagamit sa hospital, sa school, sa business, research labs, and even yung mga gadgets natin. Laptops, cellphones, merong mga radiation, artificial sources of radiation yan. That is why, as much as possible, nililimit natin yung exposure natin sa paggamit ng mga gadgets natin, lalo na yung mga computers, yung monitor niyan. Although sinasabi nila na merong nilalagay tayo na pang laban sa radiation, meron pa rin tayong meron pa rin yan na i-emit ng mga radiation which is na-absorb ng katawan natin. So, these are the... sorry. So, these are the occupations that may result in exposure to ionizing radiation. So, ito yung mga tinatawag natin na may occupational hazards to radiation. So, katulad ng aircraft pilots, pati yung mga crews, mga nagtatrabaho sa atomic energy plants, nagtatrabaho sa cathode ray tubes, katulad ng mga pagawaan ng appliances natin like the televisions, yung mga dentists, pati dental assistants, kasi gumagamit sila ng radiation sa even yung mga customers and clients nila, patients, yan. Mga gumagawa ng electron microscope, electromicroscopist, electrostatic illuminator operators, yung gumagawa ng mga fire alarms, gas mantle, high volt television repairmen, vacuum tube makers, high volt, industrial fluoroscope operators, industrial radiographers, inspectors and workers near sealed gamma ray source, Klystron tube operators, liquid level gauge operators, luminous dial painters, nuclear submarine workers, oil well loggers, or assayers. Yung mga ores na to ay nakukuha sa mga mining. Petroleum refinery workers, lalo na yung mga nasa gasoline business. Gasolines and petroleums. Physicians also. Pipeline oil flow testers. Pipeline weld radiographers. Plasma torch operators. Yung mga plasma katulad yung din ng mga television natin. Pero iba pa rin yung plasma torch. Radar tube makers. Radiologists, yung mga nagkakandak ng x-rays. Radium lab workers. Reactor worker and operators. TV tube makers. Thickness gauge operators. Thorium aluminum and thorium magnesium alloy workers. thorium ore producers. Ito yung sa mga mining, yung mga ores, pinagkukunan natin ng mga gold, yan. Underground metal miners, uranium miners and mill workers, X-ray aides and technicians, and X-ray tube makers. So these are some of the occupations that are very exposed to the hazards of radiation or the ionizing radiation. So sometimes if their work is usually exposed to deadly metals or deadly occupational hazards, there in my OJT before, I was able to work on analytical testing laboratory, and then the laboratory receives blood samples to be examined for the concentration of lead in the blood system of the workers. So that is one of the, yun yung isa sa mga ginagawa ng mga may-ari ng companies para maiwasan nila na tumaas yung lead concentration sa blood, para yung exposure hindi hazardous dun sa mga workers nila. And then occupational exposure to ionizing radiation can occur in a range of industries, katulad yung mga nabanggit natin kanina. So we have the mining and milling, medical institutions, educational and research establishments, and the nuclear fuel cycle facilities. So the term occupational exposure refers to the radiation exposure incurred by a worker which is attributable to the worker's occupation and committed during a period of work. So during work lang niya to nakukuha. So that is an occupational exposure na dapat bibigyan ng compensation. Okay. So next, we have the emission of radiation and exposure. The toxic effect of ionizing radiation depends on the type of radiation being emitted. So we have in the form of alpha particles, beta particles, gamma rays, X-rays, and neutrons. Within our cell, the primary target of radiation that produces an effect is our DNA. If the absorbed dose is high enough, the cell dies, which can lead to the scarring of the tissue. And then if a number of cells is killed, if it is large, cell death is associated with breaks in both strands of the DNA. If one strand breaks, the DNA repairs itself or mutated and becomes cancer cells. So usually, kapag na-expose tayo sa radiation, ang nagiging disease or nagiging effect sa katawan natin is nagkakaroon tayo ng cancer cells. The embryo or fetus exposure leads to lethality, cataracts, and growth retardation of the fetus or yung unborn babies. It can also have malformation, neuropathology, and behavioral problems. Kung nakakapanood kayo sa mga films, merong mga pinapakitang ganyan. Also, like in the movie Erin Brockovich, starring Julia Roberts, yun yung actually hindi naman kasi siya radiation yung sa Erin Brockovich, pero contamination sa water. Tapos nagkaroon din ng effect na malformation and nagkakaroon ng sakit, inborn diseases yung mga pinapanganak na infants na affected ng chemicals doon sa water system nila. Usually kasi nag-absorb yan up to the groundwater, which doon tayo kumukuha ng water sa mga tap water natin, mga pinaliligo, pinagtutoothbrush, wherein nakakapasok yung chemicals sa katawan natin. But for the radiation, meron din mga instances na ganun yung nangyayari. And meron na rin ako mga napanood na films na na-feature yung mga ganyang klase ng exposures. So, let's proceed with the chemical warfare agents. So, in history, So, sabi sa 600 BC daw, before Christ pa to, yung mga Syrians, dun sa Greece, took land that belonged to the Greek temple of Apollo. So, nagkaroon sila ng war, and the river Pleiestos, which supplied water to the Syrians, was diverted. So, rather than surrendering, yung mga Syrians, ang ginawa nila, they limited themselves to well and rainwater. Their enemies dumped large quantities of hellebore root, which causes diarrhea, into the river, and diverted it back to the Syrians' original channel. So, overjoyed with the abundance of water, the Syrians drank their fill. But soon after that, they had to abandon their post because of severe diarrhea. So, allowing the Greeks to reclaim their land. So, because of that, nung nilagyan nila ng hellebore, so ang ginamit nila dito na chemical warfare, yung hellebore root. Nilagay nila dun sa tubig na ginagamit ng mga Syrians. So, because of this, nagkaroon ng diarrhea yung mga Syrians, which caused them to abandon their post, allowing the Greeks to reclaim their land. So, isa yan sa mga ginamit ng history. And then, 4 centuries later, yun namang Carthaginians, they used a wine drugged with mandragora. So, this is a plant, mandragora, toxic root with narcotic effect para masubdue yung enemy nila. So, na-overrun nila yung camp ng mga kalaban na nag-drink ng wine, and then na-recapture nila yung city. So, this is also used in the history. And then chlorine gas was also used in as a chemical warfare. And then we have harassing agents like bromoacetone, which causes lacrimation. Parang tear gas tong bromoacetone, which causes lacrimation or napapaluha, kasi yung nagpo-produce ng tears natin is the lacrimal glands in our eyes. So nagpo-produce ng lacrimation, nagluluha yung mga mata nila. And diphenyl chloroarsine. So, parang tear gas lang din to. So, Germany and the US developed and stored chemical warfare agents during World War II. And then also, the Japanese used chemical agents in Chinese during World War II also. So, we have the classifications of chemical warfare agents according to their primary effect. Katulad yung nabanggit natin kanina, we have the lacrimators and vomit-inducing gases. These types of gases are often used by police in riot control. So, these are tear gas. This causes an irritation to the eye, nose, and upper respiratory tract. If enough gas reaches the upper regions of the digestive tract, vomiting occurs. So, the effect is immediate but not long-lasting. So, para lang masubdue yung mga nagra-riot, yan yung ginagamit ng mga police natin. Also, but I think meron ng mga pinapas na regulations or control sa Senate or sa Cabinet na hindi na pinapayagan yung tear gas because of minsan sinasabi nila human rights, parang hindi siya nag-ano sa human rights. Alam mo naman dito sa atin, masyadong maraming nagrereklamo kapag ganyan. Kaya minsan hindi na rin masubdue ng mga police officers natin. So, ang ginagamit na lang is maximum tolerance. Okay? So, we have 2 types of lacrimators and vomit-inducing gases. We have the CS, or orthochlorobenzylidine malonitrile. So, yan yung chemical name niya, orthochlorobenzylidine malonitrile. So, merong nitrile yan, ibig sabihin may nitrogen. Benzyl, meron siyang benzene ring. And then, chloro, Cl. Yung ortho is the position dun sa benzene ring. So, these produce an extreme burning sensation, coughing, tightness of the chest, nausea, and vomiting. Then, we have the CN naman, chloroacetophenone. It has the same effect as CS, but it is more irritating to the skin. So, skin naman yung focus niya. Ito, respiratory tract. Dito naman sa skin. So, siguro nangangati sila. Parang merong burning sensation sa skin nila. So, we have the classifications of chemical warfare agents according to their primary effect. We have the respiratory irritants. So, in addition to their irritating effects on the respiratory system, it may damage the respiratory epithelium as well. So, like the alveoli producing long-term effect. So, hindi lang siya short-term effect, pwede niya ring masira yung epithelium like alveoli na magpo-produce ng long-term effect. So, if sufficient lung damages are caused, individuals may develop bronchitis, pneumonia, or may die from asphyxia. So, examples are phosgene and chlorine gas. Then we have the skin irritants, or referred to as the nettle gas. So, the same effects are like lying down in a bed of nettle. So, at low concentration, it causes skin irritation. Parang mga ano to parang plant siya or mga dahon na nakakatusok-tusok. Parang ganun. So, at low concentration, it causes skin irritation and lacrimation also. While at high concentration, it causes blistering of the skin and may enter in the bloodstream, producing lung damage and subsequent development of pulmonary edema. So, the example is dichloroformoxime or phosgene oxime. Then we have vesicants, which targets the eyes and skin. It produces blistering and a burning sensation. They damage all tissues they come in contact with. So skin absorption may occur at high dosage because of the physical condition of the agent producing lethal effect. So ang target ng vesicants ay yung eyes and skin. So, we have two major classes, the mustard gas, used in World War I, which have a noticeable odor, and so it produces no initial effect. And then, following exposure, pain and blistering of the exposed tissue occurs, which in the eyes causes blindness. One type includes Agent Q. It is the most dangerous one, producing blindness and burning sensation at low concentration and lethal at high concentration. As far as I can recall, siguro yung dun sa Wonder Woman na movie na merong kasamang chemist involved dun sa film, ang nagginamit nila na chemical warfare is the mustard gas. Parang yun yung nare-recall ko. Then, we also have the arsenicals. These are less effective because they possess a sharp, irritating odor and cause an immediate eye pain. So, therefore, protective equipment should be worn before significant exposure occurs. It helps also kung alam nyo yung chemical warfare na haharapin nyo, especially for those na lumalaban sa mga wars. Kapag alam nila yung type of chemical warfare, alam nila yung protective suits na kailangan nilang gamitin or yung mga PPE na kailangan nilang i-prepare para makapaghanda sila dun sa harapin nilang chemical warfares. But kung hindi, they should be very ready at all times na lang. Then we have the nerve gases. This is the most feared chemical agent. An anticholinesterase inhibit acetylcholinesterase, leading to paralysis and death. So the examples are sarin, tabun, and soman. Sarin, I have heard of this in one of the series that I have watched. And sobrang kinakatakutan nga nila tong sarin kasi it is a nerve gas which affects our nerves and eventually will lead to paralysis and death. Then we also have incapacitating gases. Of course, they are designed to incapacitate. It incapacitates either the mind or the body. May exist as mixture with other chemical warfare agents. So, pwede siyang mas low yung mental and physical function, characterized by dizziness, disorientation, hallucinations, skin flushing, urinary retention, and constipation. So, marami siyang pwedeng maging effect sa katawan ng mga nabibictimize. So, for biological warfare agents, this involves the use of living organisms and toxic substances which are produced by them. So, in history, we have the Salmonella release in Rajneeshkult, the botulinum toxin in Tokyo, anthrax release also in Tokyo, the German Red Army faction, improvised laboratory containing flask of botulism toxin. In the Philippines, meron ding namatay na police recruits after accepting sweets and water from unknown persons. So, pwedeng infected ng biological warfare agents yung mga binigay sa kanilang water and food. Sa United States-Canada border, merong na-arrest for possession of botulism toxin and ricin. Yung ricin, ginamit din yan sa World War II or I, something. Yung ricin is from castor beans na, if you have watched Breaking Bad, nabanggit yung ricin din dyan, which is very lethal also. So, nagkaroon nung 2001, kung naaalala nyo pa, if you're already here in 2001, nagkaroon ng anthrax incident sa mail and parcel system. Affected din yung Philippines dyan. In New Zealand naman, a letter containing cyanide was sent to the US Embassy. In the United Kingdom, a number of parcels containing sodium hydroxide, discussed as eucalyptus oil, is mailed to a political figure. So, these are examples of what happened using biological warfare agents. So, we have also the natural occurring toxins. We have bacteria-derived toxins, which are small, usually unicellular organisms, which causes illness such as botulism, Lyme disease, or tetanus. Then, we have viral-derived toxins. Ito galing sa bacteria, ito naman galing sa virus, like the COVID-19 virus. It is much smaller, usually intracellular organism, causes debilitating fevers. Examples are the Ebola virus, and the recent example can be considered the COVID-19. So, yung bacteria is unicellular, while viruses are intracellular. Then, we also have animal or plant-derived toxins. The chemical compounds that are formed as metabolic products of living organisms. This can be the venom from snake, curare and mistletoe toxins, and also yung toxin tetrodotoxin sa galing sa pufferfish and diniscuss natin earlier. Then we also have man-made toxins synthesized and derived from the laboratories. So, first, yung bacterial agents. So, isa sa pinakakilala is anthrax. So, this is caused by Bacillus anthracis. Ito yung scientific name ng anthrax. It is a bacterium that forms spores when exposed to air. So, dito nagsisimula yung pagiging dangerous niya pag naging spore na siya. So, it becomes airborne, enters the body through inhalation, cutaneous, and ingestion. So, these are the three modes of entrance in the body. So, there is no person-to-person transmission. The spores are not easily destroyed by disinfectants and can remain viable in the soil for up to 20 years. But they can be killed by heat and chemicals. So it helps also that we know what we are dealing with para alam din natin kung ano yung pwedeng makapatay or makahinto sa kanila. So they were transported from a variety of hosts including cattle, sheep, goats, horses, and pigs. This may enter the body through the skin opening, inhalation of spores, or by ingestion of improperly cooked contaminated meat. The disease progressed to labored breathing, cyanosis, and high fever, and if it is left untreated for more than 24 hours, death may also occur. Then we have brucellosis, caused by Brucella melitensis, Brucella suis, and Brucella abortus. These occur naturally in cattle, pigs, goats, and sheep, and also horses and buffalo. These are the most likely route of is ingestion of contaminated meat. So, ang symptoms, pwedeng headache, loss of appetite, fever, general aching, chills, and stiffness in various joints. Then we have the plague, wherein person-to-person transmission is only for pneumonic plague, and it is treatable with antibiotics. So we have pneumonic sa lungs, bubonic, and septicemic plagues sa blood. Then we have glanders. This disease primarily affects horses, producing acute localized infection, septicemic illness, acute pulmonary infection, and chronic cutaneous infection, or yung sa skin, mga skin infections. Person-to-person transmission is rare, and there are limited information on the treatment of glanders. So let's proceed with the viral agents. We have dengue. This is an acutely disabling disease with rapid onset and characterized by fever, chills, intense headache, backache, joint and muscle pain, and general weakness. And rash may also occur in 3 to 4 days. So recovery takes several weeks after cessation of the fever. But there is no known cure for dengue yet, and meron lang tayong naging sinasabi na vaccination for dengue, yung tinatawag nila na Dengvax. Dengvax siya. But parang naging very controversial pa siya. So, ang naging cure pa lang dito is to taasan yung intake ng fluid sa katawan para at hayaan na mag-reproduce ulit yung mga blood platelets natin. Then you have smallpox, which is very contagious to humans and with person-to-person transmission. Although meron na tayong vaccination against smallpox. Then we have Ebola fever, hantavirus, which is a family of viruses spread mainly by rodents and can cause various diseases. And pwede na rin siguro natin idagdag dito yung COVID-19 virus. Why? So, for toxins, we have ricin, yung sinasabi ko na very dangerous also. It is a derivative of castor beans. It can be through inhalation and ingestion. It is not communicable but very dangerous for a person who has been in contact with ricin. So, we have next is botulism, which is Clostridium botulinum. It can be foodborne, infant, adult, and enteric, or in the intestinal. And there is also wound botulism. This is derived from bacteria, which has become a toxin also. We have tetanus, toxin, via bacterium Clostridium tetani. Very dangerous din yung tetanus. Kaya meron tayo namang panlaban dyan, yung anti-tetanus. Then we have T2 mycotoxins produced by molds. Route of entry is by inhalation, cutaneous, and ingestion routes. It is not communicable but mortality is high with the developed symptoms. I can recall when I was working as a laboratory analyst in Swift Foods, we are also examining T2 mycotoxins in the raw materials and the finished products of feeds for poultry. So, ina-examine kung meron bang level ng T2 mycotoxins na makaka-harm dun sa mga kumakain na poultry nung feeds na ginagawa or minamanufacture. Sorry. So, we have biological agents. The advantages of these biological agents are they are extremely toxic, low cost, self-producing, and several are available in nature, relatively low technology needed to reproduce, crude delivery methods, undetected by traditional sensor systems, psychological and sociological impact. Katulad ng COVID-19 ngayon sa atin, sobrang laki ng impact pati sa economic industry natin. It doesn't take much to cause harm. While ang constraints naman niya is sunlight, wind, temperature, and desiccation. So, with sunlight, pwedeng mamatay yung biological agents. With wind, pwede naman silang ma-sweep away. Sa high temperature, pwede rin silang mamatay. And kapag nagkaroon ng desiccation, ma-degrade or ma-decontaminate yung mga system nila. So, there are several ways of entering the body. There is cutaneous through the skin. So, wearing gloves can help. Ingestion is through the mouth and inhalation is through the airways. Then we have blood-borne pathogens. An example of this is the HIV or human immunodeficiency virus. This is the best known blood pathogen because this is associated with immune-acquired immunodeficiency syndrome or AIDS. And this can be transmitted by infected needles, by accidental puncture, and with contaminated sharp objects, or by blood transfusion. Then, pneumonia is the first disease that may appear in an AIDS-infected person. In addition, other diseases begin to appear indicative of AIDS like Kaposi sarcoma, lymphoma, toxoplasmosis, and cryptococcal meningitis. So, these are now the complications because ang tinatarget ng HIV is yung immune system natin. So, bumababa yung work ng immune system natin, bumababa yung immunity natin, kaya nagkakaroon tayo ng certain complications na diseases. Then, we have hepatitis A, B, C, and D. So, yung hepatitis A, nakocontract siya from food or water contaminated with the virus, rarely transmitted in the blood. And since virus lives for only a short time, infection transmission would occur only if the blood has been obtained from a recently infected individual and soon after used for transfusion. So, pwedeng mahawa if na-transfuse ka ng blood, infected blood with hepatitis. Then, we have syphilis, toxoplasmosis, the Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and bacteremia. These are other blood-borne pathogens being used as biological warfare agent. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. So, yun yung mga kasama sa final examination natin, Chapter 6, Chapter 7, and Chapter 8. So, please review very well, especially yung mga definitions for identification and yung mga instances na nagagamit natin or na-encounter natin yung CBRN. Okay, thank you very much for your attention and keep safe and God bless you all. Thank you.